Okay, all right. Dzień dobry. Trochę mówię po polsku, so that I'm done. Just want to say first, thank you for having me here. I'm delighted to be in Poland, and I'm delighted to be here today with you. And so I just left my notes sitting on the table there, so I'm going to ask somebody to pass them to me. They're little tiny scribbles that I probably won't look at, but they're right here. Yeah, very tiny. I probably won't even look at it, but I'll feel much better if I have it. Okay, so as all the speakers have discussed among ourselves today, we're nervous, and I am too, so I'll get started. I'm talking about faces and places today, faces and places that I've found in Poland and actually connected back to the state of New York, where I live in the US. And my process of finding these faces and places. So, see if I'm pressing, okay. So I'm going to start with what would be sort of a bad joke. A midget, a rabbi, and an opera singer are in a parking lot, and something should come after that. So my faces and places involve some very interesting characters, and my interest in them comes about through a great curiosity that I have. My name is Kitty, and in the States, we have a saying that curiosity killed the cat. Well, it hasn't killed me yet, and I understand you have a similar saying here as well. But I want to encourage you to be curious, because I've found it to be an amazing path. It's taken me on a journey over the last 6 years that I couldn't have imagined before. Persistence is another thing. I'm extremely persistent and determined. So when I get curious about something, I don't give up easily. And so I've kept looking, and I keep finding and keep finding. And so what began in 2010 as filling in for another faculty member to bring a group of students here from the US to a 3-week program in Wroclaw, Poland, has ended up with me being on a Fulbright Fellowship for 5 months here, living and working as an artist in Wroclaw, on work that began that first year in 2010. So the first face I'm going to familiarize you with is the rabbi. This is Max Landsberg, and he was educated here in Breslau in the 1860s at the Jewish Theological Seminary in Breslau, which is now Wrocław. It was a great center of learning for the Jewish faith, and especially in thinking more towards reform of the Jewish faith. And it was a very large building in a very wonderful part of town. Now, there's just a little tiny plaque for what used to be there. So my second year here in 2011, I was introduced to some people at the White Stork Synagogue, and they took me through the neighborhood and showed me this little plaque for where the Jewish Theological Seminary used to be, and it just makes a vague reference to the fact that the Reform movement moved on in the US. Mind you, I'm not a Polish scholar or a German scholar or a Jewish scholar. I'm an artist, so this is my reaction to it. So this is the parking lot. This is where the seminary was. This great center of Jewish learning is now a parking lot, and there's a lot of trash there and a lot of graffiti, and this is going uncontrollably fast. Okay, so I'm not supposed to move. So so this is what I find in the parking lot. And am I doing the right thing? Okay, yeah, good. Sometimes I find interesting images, but I mean, considering this used to be a very important cultural and educational and religious learning center, sometimes I find these images interesting. There's nothing but ground where this building was, and so many people were educated there. One of the great accomplishments of Max Landsberg, and there were many, is that in 1871, he was hired by Temple Berith Kadesh in Rochester, New York, to be their rabbi. So from 1871 into the 19-teens, he was in Rochester, New York, which is my hometown now, and he took over the leadership of the synagogue there and brought about great change. He gave sermons in German and English. He started rewriting the ritual passages that they would use in the services in English, and it was quite controversial even there. It would have been controversial here too, but what had started in the Reform movement here went further forward in the US, from what I understand. So he wrote a bunch of books and translated things into English and made them accessible to everyday people, like in today's language, but today's language in 1884. Another thing that he did, which was really wonderful, was he worked with ministers of other faiths, so Protestants, Catholics, Unitarians, and they started an interfaith service on Thanksgiving Day, which is a big day in the US, that started 142 years ago, and it continues to this day. So every Thanksgiving Day there's a service where Muslims, Christians, Catholics, Protestants, Jews, Unitarians, agnostics, atheists come together and we celebrate Thanksgiving together. So what I do with this information, so I'm a digger. I go through archives, I find maps, I find documents, and you'll see quite a few of them here. On the left, the one that says number 1522, that's kind of an overall view of a piece of artwork that I've done that combines maps of the location of the seminary with a Google Maps image of the parking lot. So you can see the outline of where the building used to be on the right-hand side as a detail. And there are actually cars parked there now and trash piled up like you saw. So one of the things I hope to do through this work, and I'm working with the Benta Kahan Foundation, which is affiliated with the White Stork Synagogue, is to help bring attention to the history of this place, past the little tiny plaque that's there now. So one of the things I did in 2012 was I had an exhibition that brought attention to what the history of that place was. And I also had brought back documents with me. I had found at the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York City old documents, diplomas that had been earned by rabbis. And made photocopies of them and folded them up and stuck them in the cracks of the building. And also did a performance piece where I walked the outline, the footprint of the building, spreading salt as a way of acknowledging the borders or the boundaries of what used to be there. Also, it's a preservative. Salt is a preservative. It's used in a lot of different rituals and things. But something that was non-destructive, that wouldn't do anything to hurt anything, but just to pay respect to the fact that something used to be there. So that work is continuing, and I'll tell you a little bit about that at the end. So next face I want to show you is Henrik Glauer, and he was a man of diminutive stature. He was about 95 centimeters high, and a very talented man. I learned about him from my second visit here in 2011 when my apartment situation didn't work out and I had to find a place to live, and I rented a room here it says guest rooms, Stop Wroclaw. At that time they were called the Alien Hostel, which I thought was kind of funny. So I stayed in this building. And while I was staying there, the family told me about the history of the building and that they had the family had bought the building in the 1950s from a man who was small, and they thought he was an actor and that he might have lived in New York. So I went through their family archives, and then I started digging around, and I learned that he was indeed of diminutive stature. I learned that he had his own circus, that he had 3 other brothers who were also small, and in the 19-teens, he started a circus, and he had about 20 people in his circus, and they performed all sorts of things: music, dance, variety. They were musicians. He is the gentleman in the foreground. And so he was the leader of this. I learned that he owned the building for sure by going to the state archives here or in Wrocław, and found out that through the city records that he had owned it in 1922 and up through 1954. So I could look that up by address. There's amazing information you can find if you start digging around. So, but I didn't know about the midget circus until 2012, when I found some postcards for sale on eBay. I had been searching in academic journals, I had been searching in libraries, and had found nothing. And so after I was here the last time in 2012, I made a connection to the fact that Henrik Glauer was part of something called Little Miracle Town, which was part of the World's Fair in 1939 and 1940. And some of the city records in Wrocław had shown that he was living in America, and that his profession was listed as actor. And this was all in German, and that translated to being a circus performer. So this actually clarified or proved that what this family thought to be true was true. And he's right in the middle here. He's in the middle there because he was not only part of Little Miracle Town, and Glauer's Royal Midget Circus was part of it, but he was the mayor of Little Miracle Town. So this was 1939 and 1940. So it can be, maybe you could think it's kind of funny to talk about a midget and a little midget circus, but it was 1939 and 1940. If he was here, chances are it wouldn't have turned out so well for him. So he was there, and he was living in this. I actually found this yesterday. I'm continuing to find information because so many things are getting digitized now. This is through the Internet Archive. And I found a home movie of the World's Fair, and there's this 2 to 3 minute section in there that actually has them walking through Little Miracle Town, and there's some footage with Glauer, the mayor, talking to people, and it's really just tickled me to no end. So what I do with these documents, I showed you another example, and here's another example, is I take these documents, the postcards, the bill of sale of the house, family pictures from the family that owns the building now, and I combine them together in sculptural works or performance pieces or photographs that then sort of retell the story. So the next face I want to show you is the opera singer. This is Selmar Sestorini, and he wasn't just an opera singer. He was an opera singer in Germany. He performed in Vienna, in Berlin, all over the place, to great regard. He performed at what's now the Wrocław Opera House, at the old State Opera House back then. And this opera, Cavalleria Rustica, is coming up. It's going to be performed in June, so I'm going to go to the Opera House to see it performed there, because I think it's important. Selmar recorded a number of albums, both as an opera singer, but also in his second career, which was as a cantor, as the Oberkantor for the new synagogue in Breslau, Germany, which is now Wrocław. If you know anything about the history of Wrocław, the new synagogue was this enormous, the second largest synagogue in all of Europe, and next to Berlin. And on the right-hand side here, the highest point that you can see, that is the top of the synagogue. So these are all documents that I've found through research here and also through the family of Sestorini. So pause for a second just to tell you about the family of Sestorini. I got an email in December. I knew that I was coming here in January, and I got an email in December from somebody saying their grandfather was Sestorini. He was an opera singer. I never knew of him before December. And would I be willing to take a picture of his tombstone because he's buried in Wroclaw? So I said yes. So it ended up that he turned over all this information to me about his family history, and including these records that he had recorded. So let me just wrap this up. I found documents in the state archives that showed the synagogue, where the house was that he lived, proof of the address that he lived in, floor plans for the house. And then there was this wall that's very close to where the new synagogue used to be. So I went to the state archives and I went through plans, and on the bottom, well, sorry, my earrings. And I found this plan, and this plan corresponds to the wall. It's a detail of the wall. And that's me making a rubbing on the wall, which I'll use those images in some artwork to come. But so basically, through this research and being really persistent, I've been able to find documents that show that this wall was part of the new synagogue. And so I want to encourage you to wrap up, to be resourceful. Don't just do research on your computer. Talk to people. Use primary sources, people, original documents, photographs, archives, libraries. These are just some of the sources that I've used. These are places I visited. There's probably 10 times that many places online that I've used. Be brave, learn languages, ask questions, travel, follow your passions, gut, and intuition. Anybody who would have heard me talk about this 5 years ago probably thought I was crazy, and now I'm here on a fellowship doing this work. Be curious and persistent. Keep looking. Ask many people. Don't rely on just one person's version of a story. Trust your curiosity. Use multiple sources. Stories will find you, and once they find you, it's your responsibility to share them. So your call to action, because I have to give you homework, because actually I'm a professor back home. This weekend, ask somebody about their life. Ask your grandma, ask the person who works at the store, ask the person at the market, and be brave, be curious, be persistent, be interested, and be interesting. And if you want to see what the work is that I'm doing, you're welcome to check out my website or find me on Facebook.